Hello, everyone, and welcome to the pre-recorded lecture on 9th of October 2020. And we have been discussing about coal geology. In the last class, we had discussed about the microscopic components of coal, and we call them as macerals. We basically subdivided them into three categories: vitrinites, inertinite, and liptinites, uh, and discussed about them. Today, we are going to start with another important aspect of coal. What essentially controls coal grade? We are going to look at, and we have slightly hinted about what controls coal grade. We said that the amount of inorganic material present in coal essentially degrades your coal, right? So, lesser the inorganic matter in coal, higher is its calorific value, and it's easier to use. Hence, the grade of the coal is better if there is less uh, inorganic material within the coal. Okay? So the coal grade is primarily, as you can say, so the coal grade is essentially controlled by mineral matter abundance. Mineral matter is nothing but what we have also discussed about the uh, ash content. So that has there are two types of controls. One is primary control, the other is secondary control. The primary control can be due to occurrence of bands and lenses, which we call as partings. The result from the influx of minerals in the sediments washed into the peat mire during deposition, or fallen from air due to volcanic activity like volcanic ash and tuffs. These are easy to separate from coal during mechanical processing like crushing or density separation. Okay. So the macroscopic partings that you observe in coal, and we discussed about them. So they can essentially degrade your coal. Now there could be adventitious or dissolved minerals in coal as well that precipitate out of solution from groundwater. Okay? These often occur at mixed with the ground mass or matrix macerals, and are small and difficult to separate. Okay, from the coal during mechanical processing. So something which is the dissolved minerals which are present in the coal matrix, which cannot be separated very easily mechanically. Okay, then you also have inherent ash that is participated by the plants themselves, right? They are inorganic in origin. I mean, they are produced by organic processes, but um, they are not non-carbon material, themselves, either as minerals or organometallic complexes. Examples are phytoliths, right? These are really small, often molecular scale, high highly impossible to separate from coal during mechanical processing. Okay? And then there are others which are the secondary control, like the seal of cracks and fissures. You can see some examples here. These are fissures or cracks or fractures present in coal. You can see here in this picture. Okay, you can see two pictures, one bottom, one top. In here, the thing is not filled up by some material. It's pretty empty. But here you can see those fractures and fissures are filled with quartz, perhaps. Okay, so if it is filled with quartz, you can imagine that they will also degrade your coal, but then they are extremely difficult as well to uh, get it out. Okay, so that these the mineral matter abundances uh, by their nature actually degrades the coal quality. Okay. So, what are the mineral matters that we find? Essentially, we can find SiO2, the quartz, then the clay group of minerals, illite, kaolinite, mixed layer clays. We can find carbonates. We can also find pyrite. Pyrite is also fairly common in coal. The accessories like galena, sphalerite, chalcopyrite, monazite, apatite, barite, zircon, feldspar, and micas, right? So there are these are the primary major species of inorganic material which are present in coal, and these are found in trace quantity. Okay. So we talked about the different components of coal. So the different components of coal are total moisture, then mineral matter, then of course the organic matter. The total moisture of coal can be subdivided into two parts: surface moisture and inherent moisture. The mineral matter is constituent of, ash, which is the solid part, mineral matter, and then of course the volatile mineral matter, and then you have volatile organic matter as well. The volatile mineral matter and volatile organic matter together constitutes of the volatile matter, and the rest of it is actually fixed carbon. Now you have a piece of coal that you have mined from your from a coal mine. Then you take it through some analysis which we call as proximate analysis, and you have to read about proximate analysis from the book. Yeah, there are several steps given in the book, where they say how do you calculate total moisture, how do you calculate mineral matter, how do you calculate the fixed carbon, and then you can express and you can report the specification of coal on raw, dry ash free, dry mineral matter free basis. Okay, so which we also briefly touched also in previous lecture. Okay, so you must read about the proximate analysis. What are the different steps? So I can briefly talk about them. What you do, you take the coal, you take a little bit of a sample of the coal, then you pulverize it, you leave it for some time to dry, and then you weigh. That essentially gives you the quantity of surface moisture. Then you heat it up for some time, all the volatile matter goes away, then you again weigh, and then that gives you the amount of volatile matter, and then so on and so forth. You finally come to a conclusion that this is the amount of fixed carbon present in the coal. Okay, so you must read about proximate analysis, how all these things are calculated. Okay, which is very well given in Singh's book. And there is, with proximate analysis, there is also something called ultimate analysis. Okay, that also you must read. In ultimate analysis is extra. You also find out the calorific value. Okay, you also kind of find out the calorific value of the coal. Okay. So proximate analysis and ultimate analysis are two very important analysis which are done with coal to calculate the total moisture, mineral matter, and the amount of fixed carbon and volatile matter present in the coal. And in ultimate analysis, you also calculate the calorific value of the coal. How they are calculated, the detailed description, how much temperature is used, how long it is kept, and so on and so forth are actually pretty well discussed in Singh's book. So please read them. It's pretty much included in your syllabus. So the major stages of qualification given by Levine 1993. Okay, so as we have said, the approximate ASTM ranks, ranges from peat to lignite to subbituminous, then upper subbituminous through high volatile bituminous, then uppermost high volatile uh, high volatile through low volatile bituminous, and then semi anthracite, anthracite, and meta anthracite. Okay, so from wood, the formation of peat is called peatification process. So from wood, so the primary material that we have is wood or the plant material. So from wood, I form peat. From peat, I form lignite, subbituminous to high volatile bituminous, low volatile bituminous to anthracite, yes, semi-anthracite, anthracite, and meta-anthracite. So the process involved from wood to peat is called peatification. From peat to lignite is called dehydration. Water basically goes away. From bituminous to from subbituminous to bituminous is called bituminization. From high volatile bituminous to low volatile bituminous is called debituminization. Okay, and from low volatile bituminous to anthracite, formation of anthracite is called graphitization. So, what is the predominant processes in case of peatification? So, maceration, I mean formation of macerals takes place. Humification, gelification, the material becomes jelly-like. Fermentation, concentration of resistant substances, lipid and minerals. So these are the processes that take place during peatification process. During dehydration, of course, dehydration takes place, compaction takes place, loss of oxygen-bearing groups takes place, expulsion of organic acid, carbon dioxide, and H2O takes place. And then in bituminization process, generation and entrapment of hydrocarbon, depolymerization of matrix, increased hydrogen bonding. That is what takes place during bituminization. And during debituminization, there is cracking, expulsion of low molecular weight hydrocarbons, especially methane. Okay, so methane actually comes out but during the process of debituminization. And then during graphitization, coalescence and ordering of pre-graphitic aromatic lamella, loss of hydrogen and loss of nitrogen. So these are the processes. So this is the whole qualification process, which can be subdivided into purification, dehydration, bituminization, debituminization, and graphitization. And by this process, coal actually achieves maturity. Okay. So what is the physicochemical changes are associated with each of these steps? So in case of purification is the formation of humic substances, increased aromaticity of the material. In case of dehydration, decreased moisture content and oxygen to carbon ratio, increased in heating value, and cleat develops. Cleat means the inherent fractures present in the rock. Okay. In case of bituminization, what is the physicochemical change that happens? Increased vitrinite reflectance, okay, fluorescence, increased extract yields, decrease in density, sorbate accessibility, increased strength, mechanical strength we are talking about. In case of debituminization, the vitrinite reflectance still increases, the fluorescence decreases, molecular weight extract decreases, hydrogen by carbon ratio decreases, strength decreases, and cleat still grows. In case of graphitization, uh, decrease in hydrogen by to carbon ratio, uh, which is reflected by stronger excited peaks, sorbate accessibility increase, RVO and isotropy increase, the strength increases, ring condensation takes place, and cleats get healed. So you can see that while the graphitization process, so at I mean, the cleats still grow from the bituminization process to the debituminization process, but during graphitization, actually cleats heal. You don't find a lots of cleats in anthracite variety of coal. So the maximum amount of cleats, the fractures which provide permeability to coal bed, are basically present in subbituminous to bituminous rank of coal. So of course, during the qualification process, there is increase in hydrogen to carbon ratio, okay, and then increase in oxygen to carbon ratio as well. So you can see, depending on that, we can subdivide qualification pathways into three categories: category 1, category 2, and category 3. During category 1, you know, liptinites and cutinites form wax cuticles. Vitrinite forms huminite, lignin, wood. So from cellulose, it becomes wood, lignin, huminite, and then vitrinite. And type 3 is the evolution of the inertinites. I mean, inertinites do not change a lot because they are generally mineral matter. Okay? So during qualification process, of course, different gases to come out. Okay, different gases come out, and you can see this is sapropellic coal. We have already defined what is sapropellic coal. This is humic coal. We have already defined one is banded, one is non-banded, and you can see with temperature. Okay, with temperature, that means my increase in maturity. Okay, what are the different types of gases that are coming out from coal? Okay, so you can see around 150 degrees centigrade, yeah, around 150 degrees centigrade for both sapropellic coal and humic coal is the presence of the peak of uh, thermogenic CH4. So that essentially forms the coal bed methane. That forms this CH4 is associated with coal bed methane, CBM, which we will discuss in detail later on. Okay, in humic source, of course, before that temperature, there is a peak for carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide peak is relatively less for sapropellic coal. Okay, and then of course there are heavier hydrocarbons like C2H6 plus. Okay, they are more in sapropellic coal, less in humic coal. There is also expulsion of nitrogen and H2S. Okay? Now, where does your how much mature your particular coal is? Of course, you can find out from your vitrinite reflectance. Okay, if the vitrinite reflectance is around 0.5%, that means this coal itself can actually generate oily material. Okay, it can generate oil. If it is more than 1.2, then that is what we call as oil death line. That means all the oils come completely gone from the system. It actually produces gas. You can also see that the gases are somehow subdivided into two categories: biogenic and thermogenic. So at the very top part of the window between 20 to 50 degrees centigrade, it generally creates biogenic gas. Biogenic gas means gas comes out due to the work of bacteria on coal. And the thermogenic gas is, of course, due to thermal maturity. Okay, so we have been talking about cleats. So cleats are the primary fractures that forms during desiccation and dehydration process and qualification process of coal. So cleats result from the qualification process while the moisture gets lost. So they are generally called desiccation cracks. Okay, desiccation fractures. Okay. Um, and the paleotectonic stress. So there are two sets of cliffs which are found in nature. Okay, one which are fairly continuous. Okay, if I look at this particular picture, I can see there is one set of cliffs which is well developed. Okay, this set, and then there is another set which is like less developed. Okay, so this set is called face cleat. The well-developed set of fractures is called face cleat, and the discontinuous, less developed set of fractures is called butt cleat. Okay. The direction of face cleat actually is parallel to the maximum horizontal stress, H max. Okay. So while the coal was forming, and then suppose there were tectonic stresses working on them, so the face cleats essentially follow the direction of maximum horizontal stress. Okay, and butt cleats are generally at a high angle or almost perpendicular to the face cleats. So that's why they say clits result from coalification, moisture loss, and paleotectonic stresses, of course. So this is not the stress of today. This is the stress while the clit was being formed. Okay? While the coal was being formed. So increase in bulk density due to pore loss and development of fractured system in clit. So this happens because there is a density increase and the pore space actually gets lost. They are generally present in the brighter bands. So we have talked about the bright band and dull band present in coal. So they are generally present in the bright band. Okay, face slits are extensional fractures. Okay, develop parallel to the maximum principal stress. We talked about that. Slits generally open due to exhumation. So due to isostasy, what happens? The coal which forms maybe at a depth of hundreds of kilometers that can come up to the surface, and while it comes up to the surface, it actually goes through stress relaxation. Okay, the effective stresses around it actually decreases, and what that does, the clits which were pretty closed below and had a very low aperture, that essentially when the coal comes up to the surface, the aperture actually opens up, it becomes more open, and then the permeability of the coal actually increases. So what we find that the coal permeability is higher at the surface and the coal permeability decreases with depth, simply because of the higher effective stress at depth, the clits are actually closed. Okay, and then clits open during exhumation. Exhumation is a process of uplift and erosion, right? It can be overprinted, of course. I mean, there could be tectonic fractures overprinting on the clits. Clit orientation can swing due to subsequent folding. Okay, if there are later deformation, the clit orientation can swing, can be different than how it was formed. Clits will be open and closed depending on the current stress field and degree of mineralization. These clits can also be filled up with minerals, and then the permeability can get lost. Okay, we will talk more about clits when we talk about coal bed methane. Now, the gas storage, as we say that coal bed essentially expels gas, and then the gas is essentially stored and absorbed within the matrix of coal. So you can see here beautiful the core of a coal. Okay, and you can identify the bright and dull bands here. Okay. Now, if you look through the rock under scanning electron microscope, you can see the scale 100 micrometer. The beautiful fibrous coal matrix is seen. This is coal matrix. Okay. So gas is physically absorbed to the coal particles, which are the macerals, and held by molecular attraction. Within pore space, clits and fractures, and so this is the adsorbed gas, and then it can be within the clits, okay, which is like free gas, which is around 10%. 90% is within the matrix as adsorbed gas, and then it can be dissolved in water because these cliffs are often filled with water. Okay, and the gas can be dissolved in that in that water. It doesn't come out until the pressure is released, unless the water is flushed out. We'll discuss about this point later while we talk about coal bed methane. But for the time being, remember 90% of the gas present in coal is actually adsorbed in the coal matrix. Okay, and a very little amount is actually dissolved in the water, maybe 85% to 90%. Okay, a little bit of fraction is dissolved in water, which is present in the clit system, and some part are free gas, which is lying there in the clit system as well. So coal deposits worldwide, you can see US, Russia, China, and India. Australia has quite large coal deposits. Also in South Africa, little bit in South America. You can see Australia. This is Queensland, right? In Queensland, you have a lot of coal deposits. Russia and China has very high major deposits of coal as well. You can see in India, this is my Gondwana Basin. Okay, Gondwana Basin, and here are the Kutch lignites. There are also some basins here, which are like angular to the Gondwana basin. So most of the coal in India comes from Gondwana basin. So recoverable coal reserves in worldwide, I mean, how much coal is generally recovered in the United States? Of the total coal, around 28% is recoverable. In India, it's around 7%. It's not very high with the current technology. Okay, so I will just stop the pre-recorded lecture here, and I will continue with the live lecture on the next class next week. Thank you very much.